there is a billionaire NBA executive. He is a part owner of the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors in California, in San Francisco. His name is Chamath Palihapitiya. Okay, so forgive me if I screwed up the name. And he was doing a podcast. And I have to say, one of the most amazing things about people who are extraordinarily wealthy is that very often they really think they know things they do not know. There's a famous line from Fiddler on the Roof. When you're rich, they think you really know. But the truth is, for some people, when they are very, very, very rich, like not just F you rich, but F the whole world rich, they start to think that they know all the things. They know everything about politics. They know everything about world affairs. They don't have to have studied anything because, after all, the proof is in the pudding and they are worth a lot of money. And they are not even bound by the strictures of basic morality and decency. The reason that I bring this up with regard to this billionaire is because this billionaire NBA owner, who's the owner of one of the most virtue signaling organizations in America, right? The Warriors, whose coach is Steve Kerr, who is a very left-wing guy. He's virtue signaled on everything from Black Lives Matter to Donald Trump. The team is a very left-leaning team on everything from gay rights to transgenderism. Right? The entire social sort of place of this team is to represent the far left. The owner of this team, he came out on a podcast and he said he does not care about the Chinese Uyghurs. He was asked specifically about the NBA's relationship with China. And he says it just straight out. Now, what's amazing about this is that he has the gall to say this openly on a podcast. Like, this isn't leaked audio. It's not as though he said this secretly on a phone call and then it leaked into the public eye. He said this into a microphone on a podcast he knew was being taped, and he apparently thought that this was a perfectly moral thing to do and say, which is pretty incredible. It really is. For somebody who lives on the left and I'm sure knows of the strictures of cancellation, it's amazing that he felt comfortable enough to say this directly into a microphone. But it does show what the left actually believes about China and its predations on the world stage. So here is what this billionaire NBA executive, Chamath Palihapitiya, had to say about the Chinese destruction of the Uyghur community in Xinjiang.
Let's be honest, nobody cares about what's happening to the Uyghurs, okay? You bring it up because you really care, and I think that's nice that you care. The rest of us don't care. I'm just telling you a very hard...
Wait, you're saying you personally don't care?
I'm telling you a very hard, ugly truth, okay? Of all the things that I care about, yes, it is below my line. Okay? Of all the things that I care about, it is below my line.
Okay, that's an amazing statement. It's below his line. Now, what's amazing about that, too, is that he then continued along these lines. Like, what was above his line? What he said was above his line was climate change. So climate change was somehow above his line, but the imprisonment in concentration camps of 1 million people by the Chinese is below his line. He said, I care about the fact that our economy could turn on a dime if China invades Taiwan. I care about that. I care about climate change. I care about a bunch. I care about America's crippling and decrepit healthcare infrastructure. But if you're asking me, do I care about a segment of a class of people in another country? Not until we can take care of ourselves will I prioritize them over us. And I think a lot of people believe that, and I'm sorry if that's a hard truth to hear, but every time I say I care about the Uyghurs, I'm really just lying if I don't really care. And so I'd rather not lie to you and tell you the truth. It's not a priority for me. He said, until America actually cleans up our own house, the idea that we step outside of our borders with, a sort of morally virtue signaling about somebody else's human rights track record is deplorable. It's deplorable. This is, by the way, how the left thinks. The left in the United States believes that the United States is the root of all evil, and so we must spend all of our time navel-gazing about the evils of the United States while simultaneously allowing him to do business in China, which is really what this is about. See, when folks on the left talk about climate change, very often, they don't really mean they care very much about climate change. They're happy to take their private jets. They're more than happy to consume extraordinary amounts of carbon and create massive carbon emissions. Climate change is just an excuse to show that you care about things that you don't actually care about. It's an excuse to say you're a good person. It is the ultimate virtue signal. It's like Save the Whales in the 1970s. Right? The way that you demonstrated to the world that you cared about things, even if you were enjoying your highfalutin lifestyle, was to say that you wanted to save the whales. Then it became Save Tibet, right? For a little while, it was Save Tibet, okay, which actually was a pretty good cause. I mean, listen, I like whales too. But let's be real about this. The vast majority of people who are slapping a Save the Whales bumper sticker on the back of their car were then consuming inordinate amounts of plastic and then dumping them into the ocean. So this silly thing that you see people like Chamath Palihapitiya saying, I don't care about 1 million Uyghurs in slavery in China. What I do care about is climate change. Yeah, bullcrap. I don't think you care about climate change either. I don't think you care about any of these things. I think what you care about is virtue signaling to your own left-wing base while being able to do business with the people who make you richer, which is what this is really about. Okay, the reason that he is saying he doesn't care about this is so that he can defend China and so that he can rip on the United States. If your moral compass is so skewed, you spend all day long talking about the evils of the country that has made you rich and famous and allowed you ownership of a major sports franchise, while simultaneously poo-pooing the human rights violations of the Chinese Communist Party, some of the worst human rights violations in human history. I mean, this Chinese Communist Party is responsible for the death of 40 million people in the Great Leap Forward, responsible for the yearly forced abortion of hundreds of thousands, millions of children over the course of decades, responsible now for the subjection of the entire population of Hong Kong to sheer tyranny, the imprisonment of 1 million Uyghurs, and threats to Taiwan. Right? That doesn't bother you at all, but climate change is your I don't believe you. I don't think you're being perfectly honest. I think if you were perfectly honest, what you'd say is you don't care about the Uyghurs, and you also don't care about climate change, and you also don't care about this social justice warrior nonsense. What you actually care about is getting very wealthy and demonstrating to your friends at the cocktail parties that you're really, really well versed and in the demands of woke culture. And like he continued along these lines. Again, he says, quote, "Look at the number of black and brown men that are incarcerated for absolutely ridiculous crimes. I don't know if you saw this past week, there's a person released from jail because he couldn't even be protected in jail because in some of these cells, they run these fight clubs inside of Rikers that are basically tacitly endorsed by the corrections officers that don't do anything. So if you want to talk about the human rights of people, I think we have a responsibility to take care of our own backyard first, and then we can go and basically morally tell other people how they should be running their own countries. No, I'm pretty sure that we don't actually have to fix the problems at Rikers Island to point out that taking 1 million people of a different religion and shoving them into a concentration camp and forcing them to live in slavery and forcibly sterilizing their women, I'm pretty sure that no matter what happens at Rikers, we can say that's bad. See, the thing is that this is something that the folks on the radical left, they love to do. They love to claim that you are a hypocrite if you say that we should look at human rights in China, but you haven't taken care of all your own problems at home first. No, what they are really doing is saying you shouldn't have any standards at all on the global stage. Because no matter what the antecedent is, the consequent in the sentence is going to be, so we shouldn't pay attention to the Uyghurs. And the reason for that is because he's making a lot of money off the Chinese. Right? It comes down to money. I mean, this is a cynical take, but it's real. For the NBA, for the LeBron Jameses, and for the Chamath Palihapitiyas, it comes down to the cold, hard cash. And Chamath continued along these lines. He said, because it wasn't just enough to say, listen, China's got its problems, we've got our problems, we should solve our problems first. He then continued by actively downplaying the dictatorship of Xi Jinping in China.
I'm not even sure that China is a dictatorship the way that you want to call it that. Again, I think
communist country that's in the name.
Look, you have to understand, Jason, there are a set of checks and balances here on China that, at the end of the day, I don't think that I have the moral absolutism to judge China. And I would say that when NATO is silent, the United Nations is silent, all of Western Europe is silent, and America is effectively silent, that this issue may be small data points being extrapolated in a way to create a narrative that maybe not be true.
Did Xi Jinping write this guy? Like in a lab? This is unbelievable stuff. By the way, the reason the United Nations is silent is because China is on the Security Council. They can veto anything. It's like saying, the UN is really silent about Russian predations in Crimea. Yeah, because Russia can veto anything on the Security Council. You want to know why the EU is silent on China? Because the EU will do whatever it can in order to keep China in its corner the same way this guy will. The dirty little secret about the opening of China is that China used capitalism to worm its way into power in a wide variety of countries by making its market dependent on the rest of the world kowtowing to it. And the rest of the world went, well, okay, well, I guess we can't care anymore about them doing evil things as long as we can sell cheap product in China and manufacture cheap product in China. It really is an incredible thing, right? The response from Chamath is pretty insane. It really is. The belief system that America is so evil that we have nothing to say about Chinese predations. I wouldn't believe it if he said it. And I really don't believe it when he's making money off of China. So the Warriors then put out a statement about Chamath Palihapitiya's statement. Quote, as a limited investor who has no day-to-day operating functions with the Warriors, Mr. Palihapitiya does not speak on behalf of our franchise, and his views certainly don't reflect those of our organization. Okay, I noticed a few words that you didn't mention in that statement, Golden State Warriors. You didn't use the word China, and you didn't use the word Uyghur. I noticed that. By the way, he then put out a statement trying to walk this back. And his statement trying to walk this back is egregiously vague. Quote, In re-listening to this week's podcast, I recognize that I come across as lacking empathy. I acknowledge that entirely. As a refugee, my family fled a country with its own set of human rights issues, so this is something that is very much a part of my lived experience. To be clear, my belief is that human rights matter, whether in China, the United States, or elsewhere. Full stop. Well, no, that's not your belief. Now I think you're lying. I also noticed that you didn't mention the Chinese Uyghurs anywhere in that statement. And the problem here is not a lack of empathy. The problem here is that you just value your cash more than you value actual values. And this is true for so many of these. It's amazing how many virtue signaling companies in the United States, all these companies that are using virtue signaling to market, because let's be frank about this. During the Black Lives Matter protests of 2020, when the corporate world dumped $23 billion with a B dollars into various causes promoted by Black Lives Matter, that was a payoff. It was a pure corporate payoff. It was an attempt to get all of the wokesters to leave them alone. It was an attempt, not only that, to capitalize on the wokesters. It was an attempt to say to the black community of the United States, which the media assured us was 100% behind defund the police, which of course is not true. It was corporations attempting to appeal to a particular demographic by throwing money at the problem and pretending that they, as a corporate culture, had moved into woke territory. So leave us alone and allow us to make our money. And not only that, why don't you spend money with us? Because if you spend money with us, then you're backing the cause. When it comes to China, however, the problem is they're making more money off of China than they are losing money from people in the United States who refuse to do business with them. This is a very simple business calculation for all these businesses, including the NBA, including Chamath Palihapitiya. Okay, the calculation is this. If they rip China, China cuts off the market. If they don't rip China, China leaves the market open, and the number of people in the United States who are upset enough to turn off an NBA game is Enos Cantor. Right? That is the total number of people in the United States who care enough. And this is why he's going to get away with this. He'll say it, and it won't be a problem. LeBron James, hell, said it, and no one cared. Because either they're right and no one cares about the Uyghurs, or, as it turns out, most people just want to watch basketball, and they can get away with nearly anything. But that should demonstrate full-scale how cynical they are when it comes to their other causes, too. It's not that they care about Black Lives Matter and they don't care about the Uyghurs. It's that they don't care about any of these things. They don't care about any of these things. They are pure money-making machines. So the question becomes, if you're on the right, or if you're just an American who doesn't like Chinese predations, the question becomes, why are you falling for it? Right? Either you push back, or these folks are going to do whatever is most on their bottom line. Well, whatever makes their bottom line the strongest is what they are going to do, which means virtue signaling to the woke, because the woke are willing to, number one, leave the profit margins of the NBA alone, so long as the NBA does its performative ritual Maoist struggle sessions on race. So they can make money there, and they can make money in China so long as they don't piss off the Chinese. So if you actually want the NBA to change its behavior, then you're going to have to push on the other side. You're going to have to say to the NBA, no, we are not going to patronize your games. No, we are not going to spend money on the Warriors. No, we are not going to buy your gear. You have to become as militant on the pro-America side as so many on the left are on the anti-America side. Because right now, you have a complete imbalance of power. You have a complete imbalance of power when it comes to the right and the left, when it comes to corporate America in this country. The left can manipulate corporate America by trying to exert pressure, both market pressure and regulatory pressure. And the right sits there and they're like, well, we'll buy whatever product is necessary. This is why I've said there must be some sort of mutually assured destruction that is brought to bear on these massive companies. That mutually assured destruction must say, either you guys stay completely apolitical and you stay out of politics entirely, or you're going to get clocked. Because if you move to the left, you'll get clocked by the right. And if you move to the right, you'll get clocked by the left. And then there'll be a neutrality that is put in place. Okay, so that has to happen from a popular level in the United States. But there's something else that has to happen here, and that is that the West has to start seeing China as the threat that it is, because it's not just that China is a military threat. It's not just that China has a huge military arsenal and they're pointing it at places like Taiwan, and they are attempting to choke off the South China Sea, and they're attempting to affect shipping straits, and they are threatening Australia, right? That's not just the problem with China. The problem with China is that they are militarizing our own institutions against us, because China has realized the game. They've been able to weaponize the power of capitalism in order to pervert all the businesses that want to do business in China. How's this for a title? Ben Shapiro Show subscriber destroys like button with clicks and logic. I'd watch that. Make it happen, gang.